Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss situation in Ukraine on the 21st of June. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And this video we are going to start with our famous and favorite Toshkovka. If you remember a few days ago, like 3 days ago, I told you that Toshkovka fell and that the Russians took control over Chihirova. This Chihirova, the west block in this small village. This is Toshkovka and this is Chihirova. And after that, the Ukrainian military authorities reported that there were very heavy clashes in the triangle between Bila Gora, Mirna Dolina and Ustinovka. And if you remember the West Sources map, they were showing us that the Russians were controlling the territory between these three towns, Mirna Dolina, Bila Gora and Ustinovka, this one. And this morning I started analyzing this territory and I understood that the West Sources map was wrong, because it's impossible to hold the area between these three towns. You see, this just the fields. You see, just the fields, nothing, no forest, no rivers, no towns, no buildings, nothing there, just the forest. This is the area. This is Ustinovka, this is Mirna Dolina, and this is Chihirova, the block in Toshkovka. And the West Sources map were saying that the Russians were controlling this area. And I understood that it was some kind of a mistake, because they were showing this area because Ukrainian military authority report did add this information into their reports, but they didn't tell exactly where exactly the battles are. I started analyzing this territory and I understood that the Russians weren't controlling this area, and I understood that the Russians were fighting for this hill, for this area. This is a fortified Ukrainian positions, a big hill, very nice position to establish some eyes and to control this area. And this area is the key area in this region. Who controls this hill controls the bridgehead that lays between this hill and Lysychansk, for example, Dolina, Podlesna, and so on. If we're talking about the Russians, from their side, they had another hill, this one, and using this hill, they were controlling the territory in front of them. And the Ukrainians using this hill were controlling the territory in Toshkovka. There was, like, as you see on this map, there's trenches, so it was a very nice position, and I suppose that there were going to be battles for a very long time, at least 4 or 3 days, and we got this confirmation from the Ukrainian military authorities report. And today I plan to discuss this hill, because I suppose that the battles in this area at least are going to be till the end of this week. But this noon, a few hours ago, we got some confirmation from the Ukrainians, from the Russians, that all this entire front line collapsed. The area between Toshkovka, Ustinovka, Bila Gora, Mirna Dolina, Podlesna, these fortified positions, the north of Gorskaya, collapsed totally. If we take a look at the West Sources map, you're gonna see that they have updated. Now they're showing us that Chihirova and Toshkovka is under the Russians. Finally, that happened. You see this like red territory that the Russians are developing and increase their bridgehead. They have almost established control and encircled Ustinovka. That they reached the suburbs of Bila Gora, and that they reached the suburbs of Mirna Dolina and Podlesna. But if we take a look at the Russian sources map, you're going to see that all these towns is under the Russians. The Russians established control over Mirna Dolina, over Podlesna, and there is a lot of questions about Ustinovka, because from the Russians there is no confirmation that they managed to take this town, but they took at least a big part of this town. I think that by the end of this day, the Ukrainian force in Ustinovka will be forced to leave this area, and this town is also going to be under the Russians. And some sources are saying that maybe by the end of this week, the towns Laskutovka and Alexandrovka is also going to be under the Russians. So as I understand, those 3 days there were heavy clashes in Toshkovka, Chihirova, and one is the most important, around this landfill and around these trenches. This one. And as soon as this area falls, I had some video today that the Russians drone were flying under this area, above this area, and from this drone there was a video how the Russians were shelling this forest, shelling Mirna Dolina, and then they sent their tanks, 3 tanks, using this road in direction towards Podlesna and Mirna Dolina. So there was a offensive operation. This hill fell. The Russians took control over this hill, established their eye position. They start controlling drones from this area, and they saw everything right in front of them. And just for half a day, all this front line collapsed. I don't know exactly how did that happen. If there were so heavy clashes, bloody clashes, or the Ukrainians just decided to leave. But as I see, as soon as fall this hill, the Ukrainians refused to fight here anymore, and they went back on the hill. They went on the Lysychansk oil refinery plant and Lysychansk itself. So we can say that there is a cauldron. There is already a classic cauldron. Of course, this territory between Vrubivka and Mirna Dolina is not continuous. Of course, there is a way to pass this area. But this territory is under very full and heavy fire control. So let's update this map. First, let's add some territories and the difference between the West sources map and the Russian sources map. You see the differences. According to the Russians, they took Vrubivka a few days ago. They took the middle part of Kamyshovacha. They took Orekhov a very long time ago, maybe a month ago. Toshkovka has been updated. Ustinovka, it's like softly changes because both sides are saying that a part of Ustinovka is under the Russians. So I just marked the half, but softly. I consider exactly the border between the two armies. And Podlesna and Mirna Dolina is under the Russians. The Russians took this town this morning, today. This is the West sources map. You see the flags on this area saying that this territory is under the Russians. Of course, it's better to wait a day or another, because I'm sure that maybe this night the Ukrainians will try and will do some counter-offensive operations toward this area. But Mirna Dolina and Podlesna is not so important. The most important, of course, is this hill. This is hill that controls the Gorsko-Zoltoye area, and with this hill, only with this hill, you can establish and start some cauldron over this area. According to the Russian sources, somehow they calculated the losses in Gorsko-Zoltoye cauldron, and they said that the forces in this area lost around 66% of their forces. There are still 2,500 soldiers, and they're encircled. As I told you many times in the previous videos, that there is still a way how to escape this area through Novoivanovka, between these two forests. If we take a look at this area, this is the territory I'm talking about. So they still can escape using this road, but this territory is under total fire control with mortars from Vrubivka. And if the Russians establish control over Podlesna, so that's meant that using artillery, they can fire with their, not like with mortars, but with tanks. So everything that moves from Novoivanovka towards Alexandrovka is under very heavy fire, and it's the loss. If the Ukrainians are going to use this road, we can say that their losses will be around 90%. So it's already a cauldron. Of course, it's the question of perfectionism. Somebody says that they need to establish total encirclement, but this is the case when we can say that this area is already encircled, and the forces from Gorsko-Zoltoye won't be able to leave this area. So let's update this map. Let's color this map in red, just for better understanding, and let's try to understand and try to project the Russian steps by the end of this week. So this is the current situation. So as you see, Vrubovka, Kamyshevacha is under the Russians, Orekhov under the Russians, the part of Ustinovka is under the Russians, Mirnodolina, Podlesny is under the Russians. So it's a classic cauldron with a small way to escape, but it's not escape way, it's a trap for the Ukrainians, for those forces who will decide not to surrender and try to break through this area. So it's a classic trap. It's a classic trap that we saw in Stalingrad and many other places during the Second World War. So to tell the truth, these forces should surrender. There is no other way how to escape this area. So, but what are the Russians are planning to do? My opinion that the Russians want these forces to surrender. I'll tell you why. Of course, the Russians will try to attack from Kamyshevacha. You can ask why the Russians need to attack from Kamyshevacha, is that they have already encircled this area. First of all, and from Orekhov as well. First of all, the Russians need to press and push and freeze the forces that located on the south. Because if the Ukrainians are able to accumulate forces in Gorsk and with one single attack, with one single movement, they decide to leave, of course they can break through because the front line on the north from Podlesny is not stable. For example, now, exactly right now, like at 8 p.m. of local time, there is still a possibility to escape this area if the commanders make a decision and order everybody run. And if they do this, of course, they still have possibility to escape. So to prevent this, the Russians need to start their offensive operation on the south, like to freeze these forces, because if you're attacking the enemy, your enemy can't move. And if your enemy attack you, your forces are not able to retreat because you're under fire. What can you do? You just need to give your counterfire, like to suppress your enemy and to deblocate yourself. But we understand that these forces won't be able, the Ukrainians won't be able to deblocate the Zolotoye group for many reasons. So that's why these guys are done already. The forces in Girska. These forces still can retreat, but I can't imagine the picture when the forces from Girska are retreating and leaving the forces in Zolotoye. It's not a very good option and not a very good scenario. This might happen only in case when, like, the forces in Girska, like regular forces, will decide and took a decision by themselves, like to drop everything and run away. The Russians, of course, they need to, if they are able, I don't know the situation in Laskutovka and Alexandrovka, of course, to take these towns, if it's possible. First, to establish their fortified position on the north of their town, like to build some trenches, to bring more artillery, tanks, and so on, to protect themselves from upcoming offensive operation. Because if we're talking about the classic, of course, the Ukrainian forces should start some offensive operations towards Mirnodolina, before these forces like entrenched themselves or enforced their position. And while the Ukrainians have such possibility, the next few hours, maybe the next 24 hours, even less 12 hours, they need to start some offensive operation. If they're not doing this, we can say that there is no even reason to continue this fighting at all, because what is the reason if you can't even counter-offensive, you counter-offense your enemy on the newly taken position? There is nothing to talk about. So the Russians need to enforce, the Ukrainians of course need to do some counter-offensive if they want to deblocate the forces in Girsko-Zolotoye. Of course, the Russians need to clear Ustinovka totally and to attack Laskutovka and Alexandrovka. They have already created a cauldron. So this, like, there is like 4 kilometers, and we saw that there is no like fields, no forest. You see, just a field. So the Russians can establish their position tanks along this forest and just attack everything that moves from Novoivanovka towards Alexandrovka. And from the other side, from Burubivka, they can do the same in this area. So maybe the Ukrainians still have possibility to evacuate using some forests, some roads, I don't know, but anyway, without heavy tanks and only at night. They won't be able to use tanks or vehicles to cross these fields, it's obviously. And from this side as well, as we talked, so 4 kilometers. So it's like tanks can even attack this area. I'm not talking about the artillery. So these guys is in cauldron. So this is the plan for the next day, and I'm sure that we're going to see this. Furthermore, of course, to suppress some forces, the Russians need to start their offensive operation, or at least artillery suppressing this area from these hills. Because if we take a look at this map, you're gonna see that the Russians control these hills, these two hills, and as you see that Girske is in lowland. You see that they're like a little bit in the lowland, and from this hill you can control almost entire Gorske. You can maybe see even more than Gorske. So this is, you can see all movements of your enemy like in front of you, like on your hands. And what to do next? What is the next step? Of course, the Russians don't want to kill all these Ukrainians. They're enemies, they hate each other. But we understand that somebody on the top understands that it's better to save these soldiers' lives. And of course, the Ukrainians, they don't want to die. They have families, kids, and so on. So, my opinion, I give you my opinion, that Ukrainians need to surrender as fast as possible. And if they do this, the Russians will be able to start their offensive, real offensive operation towards Lysychansk, Vyovcharovka and Lysychansk oil refinery. But something tells me that sooner or later, exactly in this area, we're gonna see a riot in the army. Yes, the riot in the army. Because the reports that are coming from the front line says that nobody wants to fight there, and that the Ukrainian command send there more and more troops, and the losses are very high. Sooner, we are living in the 21st century. We have TikTok, we have everything we need, we have YouTube, and everybody see everything. And they see that situation is perfect for the military riot exactly in this area. And if you ask me, if I was like the Russian command, I would try to do this first. And only in case if the riot fails, after that, I would start the offensive operation. Another important update from the south, from Bakhmut area. So we discussed, if you remember, like 2 ways to attack Lysychansk, to attack Bakhmut. I see the Russians choose both options, and the Wagners moved more and more closer to Bakhmut. They established control over Klinovo, and some sources are saying that the Wagners are like in 5 kilometers from Bakhmut. They're attacking from the south. So maybe we're gonna see 2 battles for Bakhmut and for Lysychansk at the same time in the very, very near future. And let's talk a little bit about our Snake Island, about this area. The Ukrainians stopped their offensive operation in this area. They did their best, of course. They used a lot of equipment in this area, a lot of vehicles, a lot of artillery systems. We know that in the period between the previous offensive operation and this offensive operation, the Russians enforced this area heavily. But the Russians are saying that in the operation of attacking Snake Island was involved around 15 drones. It's not Bayraktars, it was and attack types of drones and scout drones and so on. All these drones were controlled by 2 Bayraktars, and all this operation was controlled by 1 American drone. And if we're talking about the land part, there was 155 millimeters artillery from the Ukrainians and the Grad systems, like the MRS system Grad. And at one moment, the Ukrainians started shelling this area heavily. And don't forget about, of course, the airplanes. And according to the Russian sources, so imagine Grad systems, like artillery, drones, according to the Russians, Not even a single shell got the island. Everything was shut down by their anti-air systems. I'm not saying that it's true. Of course, it sounds unbelievable. I'm sure that the truth is somewhere between the Ukrainian position and the Russians. But the Ukrainians stopped. The only one important update that yesterday, according to the Russian sources, every single ship, the entire fleet from Crimea left their ports. And there was a lot of opinion about the situation, like entire the Russian source net was saying that the Russians started their final operation against Odessa. They sent entire fleet, like the full equipment, fully loaded towards Odessa to put like a point in the story. It was the Russian sources' position, but I have another opinion about this fact. You see that the Ukrainians attacked those oil constructions in the sea, gas constructions. And we know that the Britain premier were in Ukraine, and some sources are saying that he brought with him the harpoon systems or something like this. My opinion that the Russians left the ports with the entire fleet fully loaded just with the purpose in case of real risk of being attacked by the Ukrainians, by their rockets. So it was like the way to save, to be on a safe page, you know what I'm saying. So they fully loaded, fully equipped, and left the ports because maybe there was a high risk. They calculated everything and they understood that the operation against Bile Island, Snake Island started, and if the Ukrainians have such rockets, of course they will try to attack the port and to destroy with one rocket everything they have. Because if you remember, there was the same situation in Berdyansk. There was 3 marine ships and the Ukrainians attacked just one. It was sank. This ship sank, but the fire from this ship were dropped on other ships. So there was a very big risk of losing entire fleet, marine fleet in Berdyansk. So the same situation in Crimea. The Russians understood that there is a high risk and a high possibility that there is a rocket and that the Ukrainians can attack, and it can lead to very high losses among their fleet. So that's why it's like a very wise decision just to leave this area and to split the fleet along the sea and to be on the safe page. It's my opinion. I'm not saying that it's true. I'm just trying to analyze and understand what really happened, because after the Russians left the port, there were no news about attacking Odessa heavily with the calibers and so on. So that wasn't the point to attack this area. And that's it for today. I remind you that Military Summary channel condemns any kind of violence in Ukraine. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channels, put your likes, and enjoy your day. Bye bye.